Welcome back to the Non-Essential Podcast, Season 2.
Hi, everyone.
Yeah.
We kind of took a little bit more time off than we thought. And, I thought, hey, this would be a great way to recharge our batteries, and we'll be super excited to do the show. And then I got sick as fuck. And I don't
think you're actually sick. It was just your body knows. It's like, it's coming back.
It's how I usually react to responsibilities, is like, oh no, I can't leave my bed. But no, I literally was just like in my bed, like sweating for 3 days, feeling fucking terrible.
That's the worst.
But I went into my days off with that in mind, so it's like, okay, I'm gonna just do that. Hopefully, be rested up to start what is, I guess season 2. We're calling it.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't follow us on Twitter, which is weird because that's the only place we talk about the show.
Right.
But if for some reason you listen to the show but you don't follow us there, you don't know, we've been kind of talking and planning about like how we were going to keep going about doing a podcast, but we were going to change the format a little bit. And what we decided to do is kind of step away from the variety show format we've been doing, and kind of go more towards the fiction, the creepypastas, and what we did with episode 50, original stories. We had a lot of fun doing that, and we think by sort of taking the approach of doing one story a week, that'll be a little easier on us, and a little more,
I would say more importantly, it's easier on you, because not you, Ben, but the listener, because they don't have to sit and listen to us for like an hour and 15 minutes.
We kind of wanted to slim down the show, not only for our sake, but for the sake of having something a little more easy to listen to.
Easy listening.
Smooth stories with Ben and Steve. And we both had a lot of fun, I think, doing episode 50, sort of both the performance of narrating these stories and then just, ripping each other apart for how we wrote them. But this week, it's not an original. This week, especially due to me getting really fucking sick, we are going to do a creepypasta today. And I wanted to give you a choice, actually, because there are 2 today, Steve.
All right.
To choose from, and you have nothing to go on but the title. So there is the Crocodile Cult, and there's Squidward's Suicide.
Well, damn it. I love alliteration, so that's what the Crocodile Cult has me there. But, I mean, Squidward and SpongeBob...
Well, Squidward's Suicide is...
Yeah,
just as much alliteration as Crocodile Cult.
That's true. I don't know. I think the rhythm of it is not as... It's
not smooth, but...
Yeah. I say we go with the Crocodile Cult. I'm interested in
in gator worship.
Well, I've been looking for a new club to join, and so, I might find something here.
Yeah. Before we get going, just to finish up that, sort of let people know what we're doing, this doesn't mean that every story every week is going to be horror necessarily. Kind of like how the show was, the first 50 episodes, we fell into our niches a little bit. But we're free to kind of do whatever we want still. It's still a really loose format. We just...
I will say I've already noticed I've got one story that I'm actually well into writing, but I've got like 3 or 4 ideas. Like anytime... If you've ever written, especially fiction, but really anything, like if you're sitting there and you get even a like inkling of an idea for a story, I like to jot it down, and then like it feels like 9 times out of 10 when you actually go in to flesh it out, you're like, nah, this isn't going to work. But like that way you have, just a folder of ideas for like possible scenarios and stories and whatnot. But I've noticed that like I'm already gravitating towards a certain type of story.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I can't really do that because I do have that just like I will immediately be like, this is a shitty story, and I'll shut it down if I let it sit around too long. But if I just start working on a story, I get too invested, and it's like, well, I'm 2 pages in, I can't shut it down now.
Yeah, to be clear, when I say write an idea down, it's literally like a sentence, like, guy goes to the beach, gets sunburned, it sucks.
Well, that's a scary story. Cancer these days. Yeah, so like I'm more of like I just have to kind of throw myself into it and see what happens. And and the great thing about this show is if it's bad, then it's perfect. Like
I know, I'm almost more worried like if you write something it's good and you read it and we're like, yeah.
Like the worst thing that could probably happen is you write something, you tell the story for half an hour, and the other person's just like, wow, that's really good. And that's the show.
Which honestly is what I'm like going for. I'm not trying to write a bad story all the time. Sometimes, like the ones we did episode 50, I was trying to write a relatively
it was cheesy,
bad, good story. Right. But yeah, not everything I'm going to be writing is like specifically meant to be like cheesy. So it should be a fun season or fun series.
We don't know how long we're going to do it in that format, but stick around and we'll see how it takes shape and how eventually we realize that Steve really just wants to write stories about like living on a mountain or some shit. But anyway, let's. Those aren't the stories for today. Today's story is the Crocodile Cult. Cue the completely royalty-free spooky music that I'm going to put in here. All right. I know you will all question my sanity after reading this, saying this was all made up. I know you will, and if you don't believe me, honestly, I would not blame you. So many have made claims of stories so easily proven as someone's sick imagination, but this is not my imagination. I feel like a lot of horror stories start with shit like that, and you could cut it all out with just like, I'm not crazy. Okay, to begin.
Yeah, I mean, that was going to be my first comment, is that's very creepypasta opening, and kind of a little, like, it lost me a little bit on the jumble of, like, oh, a lot of them you can prove are this mind stuff, but this isn't. It's like, just
say you're not crazy.
Yeah, say it's true. You're not, yeah.
The following is a true story. One summer evening, I was sitting on my laptop doing some research on a book I had to read for school over the summer. Summer vacation had just started, and I had nothing else to do. I was rather lonely as my boyfriend had gone on vacation, and my best friend, Tina, had moved to Morgan City from our New Orleans neighborhood, which, like, I guess New Orleans has one type of neighborhood. I knew her since I was 4 years old. We shared everything together, from our favorite memories to other people's secrets. They moved after her mother wanted a divorce. Her father was broken up about this because he never understood why. He thought the marriage was perfect. He blamed the city and thus moved away from it. I found...
That's interesting, too. It's like, I don't understand why she wants to leave me. Fuck you, New Orleans neighborhood.
This must be this horrible town we live in. This is something that, and it's going to keep going throughout this story, but this is something I struggled with in episode 50, and I'm going to probably keep struggling with because it's just something writers do. Like, knowing when to cut out detail. Like, like, so much of this shit she talks about with, like, the father and stuff, it's not part of the rest of the story. It's like...
I hate to, like, interrupt too much of the story because that's the story pocket. But yeah, I have that same problem. One of my favorite writers ever is Ray Bradbury, and he's very good at painting elaborate, like, mental images with his words. But it's really easy when you're bad at doing that to be like, okay, well, the key is to just be very descriptive about every little detail.
Right, and then eventually it's like, all right, I know every fucking piece of anything in this room you're talking about, but I don't care about anything happening in it. All right. I found out through my mother that she wanted to divorce because of his overly religious views that did not follow her more liberal views on life, which, you think you would know about before the marriage, but...
Yeah, not always. I mean, sometimes people get more into their... But I would think if that was the case, then the dead father would understand why the mother wanted to divorce, because it sounds like it was pretty clear.
And you wouldn't blame Louisiana.
Well, I don't know. That's Louisiana, the Deep South's an area known for driving people liberal.
Right. Her father's religious views were nothing new. Most people in Louisiana were very religious, but her father was a weird type of religious. He always blessed him before he did anything of merit or if he was scared. That's just how it's written. I don't know what that means.
Yeah,
himself.
I think they mean... they probably mean God. Sometimes people refer to God as just him.
Maybe that is the weird type of religious, though. He's just blessing himself. Like,
thank you, me.
Oh, God. Thank God for me. One time he got upset when I said, oh, my God. She just adds that weird sentence, but then moves on.
Well.
But to convey the father was an asshole, pretty much. Anyway, as I was doing research, my phone vibrated. It was a text from Tina. I was ecstatic. When she moved, she rarely texted me. I assumed she moved on and made new friends or something of the sort. I didn't blame her for that. It's human nature to move on. I opened my phone. Yes, this happened before. All right, again, the detail. I've read this before, and I can't fucking follow the sentence structure at all. I opened my phone, and I guess she's saying, like, oh, I didn't have a smartphone. That's whatever this sentence is supposed to be, like, could be probably cured with, like, 2 more commas. But anyway, she doesn't have a smartphone, so you have to open your phone. It's like, okay, spaceman. The text read, hey, Sam, it's me, Tina, lol. I don't know if you still had my number. With a wide smile on my face, I responded immediately. Lol, hey, Tina, I still had your number. How are you? I'm good, Sam. Missed you so much. I missed you, too. Anyway, I was wondering, were you interested in coming down to my new house? Dad is letting me have a get-together here. I'd love to. All right, it's at 43 3rd Street. And I don't know about Louisiana, but that sounds made up. Like,
no, there's only 1/3 Street in all of Louisiana. It's pretty cool.
That's what
it's a pain in the ass when you get to the newer sections and you're like, oh, I live on 12341 1,576th Street. But
imagine how easy it is to deliver pizzas on streets that have like only 50 houses on them each. So it's like, oh, I'm going to the 43rd one. It's at 43 3rd Street. It starts at 8:30. I love that there's this detail of that, but doesn't say like the day or anything.
Yeah, just or the town or the city. It's just
right. Okay, can't wait. Lol. She does get the lols down pretty good. They are punctuation. They were then. They are now. I went to my mother, who was busy watching the latest in generic soap operas. I asked her if I could go to Tina's for the party. She knew how much I missed her and didn't have to worry about driving me as I could drive myself. She was more worried about who would be out at night. I convinced her I was a smart driver and could outsmart any drunk who swerved. I knew she wasn't worried about me being one of them. Plus, Tina's father was against underage drinking.
I didn't know that's how it works. Like, if somebody suddenly veers head on towards you, if you're smarter than them, you're safe. Yeah. Ha ha ha!
That's usually...
I outsmarted you, drunkie.
You know, I don't drive, but when I have to, like, walk to work at odd hours, like, I know I can outsmart any fucking hurling truck heading my way. The next day, I got my best clothes that were not formal. It was a pair of clean jeans with a tank top. It was a hot night. I made sure it wasn't too revealing. I didn't want to be reticulated. I've never heard that word.
Nobody wants to be reticulated. It's not a pleasant.
So props. I can bitch about commas, but I didn't know that word. So.
Oh, it doesn't work at all. Reticulated means constructed, arranged, or marked like a net or network.
Okay. So yeah, not sure what she's talking about, but we'll keep going. I got into my car and started the engine. I backed out and drove down the road. I listened to music as I drove. The night sky was dark, the stars were out, but it was a new moon. Without the moon, there was a weird atmosphere, especially since Morgan City is close to the swamps. As I drove, a flash of high beams went behind me. It almost blinded me. The car was right behind me. I pulled over because I thought he wanted to tell me something, and I was right.
Which is what you do, especially if you're a young girl
Oh, hang on.
the highway.
Hang on, I gotta see what they want.
But she'll outsmart them.
Yeah, it's fine. The pickup pulled up next to me. Hello, do you know the way to Morgan City? I paused. Did he not see the signs that pointed to all the directions that led to Morgan City? I nodded and pointed to the road. Thank you. Say, you're very pretty. I was pretty sure he was hitting on me, but I took the compliment. That's like, you're very pretty. I think this guy might be trying to hit on me. It's like, oh.
She's, again, it's just establishing that she's a very smart person.
A very smart, very pretty lady with a boyfriend.
She's smarter than drunks. She's smart enough to talk to a random stranger who stops you in a vehicle.
Yeah.
And she's, it's like character development, Ben.
There is something like this. It's not just this story. Like, me and my brother used to, like, we listened to creepypastas and stuff all the time and Reddit horror stories and stuff. And all these people, you know, trying to write horror fiction. And there's just something about these authors who always, their stories always start with, like, my boyfriend, but the boyfriend's never a part of the story. It's just like this weird throw out, like, I have a boyfriend, and that's, like, to set up for later on where it's like, you know, I have to, like, be skeeved out by later when somebody's creepy with me. It's like, you don't need a boyfriend to be creeped out by these people.
Frankly, I'm a guy, and if some random woman pulled me over and was, like, in a car and then started, like, you're a very handsome guy, I'd be creeped out.
I wouldn't be. I would be like, that's exactly true.
Yes, I know. You flip your hair back and keep driving.
That's how you gotta play. It's like, thank you, I'm well aware. And your license plate just says, I'm hot. Thank you. Say, you're very pretty. Thanks, but I have a boyfriend. Well, I figured. The reason why I said that is because it seems you are a bit revealing. His voice trailed off. Now, I felt like he was a peeper, and sweat went down my back. I cringed and uneasily pulled up my shirt. He nodded and pulled away. I looked around and drove away myself.
So despite her best efforts, she was indeed reticulated.
Yeah. Maybe that is, like, fashion terminology.
It could be, but, like, I've only heard it like a reticulated python. Like, it has to do with the pattern. And like I said, I read the definition, but I get it in that sense. I have no idea what sense that was being used in.
Right. Like, you know, I'm wondering what other words, like I watched that Chernobyl series recently, and so now I'm just like, does radiated mean something in fashion circles? Like, anyway, so I looked around and drove away. The driver left me feeling uneasy, but a few minutes later, and it was all over with. I continued to drive when yet another driver flashed me with high beams. I froze in terror when I saw them. I realized that it wasn't the same guy, but it was the second time. I decided to pull over. Like, this fucking chick is out of her mind. The driver pulled up, and I was happy to see it was a woman. She looked at me with a smile. What are you doing so late at night? Her voice reminded me of a nice old lady's. Nice old lady or not, I would totally be like, go fuck yourself.
Yeah, it's none of your damn business what I'm doing.
You don't flag me down to be like, hey, why are you out so late? Like, you're totally a hitman if you're doing that.
Right. You shouldn't be out. There might be people that try to flag you down.
Right. Going to my friend's house? I said. Oh, do you have a boyfriend or a girl? It's like, Jesus Christ. Do you have a boyfriend or a girlfriend? I looked confused at her before I realized that she was wondering if I was straight or not. Something looked down on by the religious. It was also odd that she would ask this, especially out of the blue like this.
Especially since you were both fucking driving somewhere in separate cars.
Yeah, that's usually how I hit on people. It's like, I just honk my horn for like 3 hours following them. Like, hey, you're pretty. Do you got a boyfriend? Brr. Why are you running away? Boyfriend, I said. Oh, are you a virgin? Like, holy shit. just pull out, like, at this...
Yeah, why would... Although I hope that was actually the story you're still reading. It's like, no, but we pull out.
Yeah, it doesn't count if you pull out. Her voice's sweetness was drained away, and she sounded like a witch. I nodded, and I went to go step on the gas. You weren't drinking, right? I nodded. This lady was creeping out more than the potential creeper. She was intrusive, and I was sweating again. Well, I saw you were swerving. I thought she was seeing things. I wasn't swerving, I knew that for a fact, but I nodded politely. Things were getting weirder, and then she just drove away. I felt more and more uneasy. Those two were making me wonder if I was being watched. A part of me wanted to back up and go straight home. However, I wanted to see Tina, and I knew that she would be upset if I wasn't there. I was almost there, and plus she probably wouldn't be able to hear her phone. But I don't know why she figures that. I went closer into the swamps. The mist was heavy now. I could barely see. I turned on my high beams. I went a little further, feeling uneasy. Once again, I was hit with high beams. I was more and more nervous. Sweat was pouring all around me. I went to the side of the road. A man walked over toward me. "Hello, ma'am," he said in a kind southern gentleman's voice. It was weird.
Have you ever been paid to take a dump on a person's chest? I
I
thought that was a rather unusual question, but I answered anyway.
I said, no. Like, why is the southern gentleman's voice weird? Like, that's only weird if you think everyone in Louisiana talks with, like, the same, like, thick Louisiana dialect, which is a really funny dialect. There's a regular at my job who totally talks in that way, and it's like, it's really hard. He's a nice guy, but it's hard to make out ever what he's saying. So it's always like, "Hey man, you get milk?"
Boom hour.
Yeah, it's very boom hour, but there's like a draw to everything.
Yeah.
I that's the best I could do, but it's funny. "Hi," I said, shaken. I couldn't tell if he knew about it. He gave a slight laugh. "Well, one of your tires seems to be coming off." I froze. I had heard about the Zodiac using this trick to unscrew a woman's tire. Without flinching, I sped away. I must have run over his foot as I heard a crunch and him lying on the ground in the rear view.
Well, at least he finally did something that makes sense, though.
Yeah, totally. But I like how she needed like a Zodiac reference to get creeped out and be like, floor it.
Yeah.
But,
there's a lot kind of that I have questions with that sentence too, because wouldn't the Zodiac killer have had to loosen the tire prior, first, not, I guess why she was talking to the creepy old lady,
Well, the Zodiac one was, if I'm remembering right, he didn't unscrew the woman's tire, he might have popped the tire, stabbed it or something, to make sure she couldn't get away, but, what he did was say she had a flat and then offer her a ride and then threatened to kill her, and she got out of the car somehow. But, I haven't read about the Zodiac in a while. Anyway, so she ran over that dude's foot. Probably the nicest guy in the whole story, but we'll never know because he has a broken foot now.
She's like, thankfully I'm out of there, and her tire falls off. She's like, fuck, he was right.
As I drove down the swamp, I saw something strange to my left. A faint yellow light was far away. I didn't know if it was a campfire or something like that, but I didn't plan on stopping. I kept increasing speed, and then I saw something. 2 cars were blocking the road. My heart began pounding out my chest. I could hear my blood flowing through my bloodstreams. I stepped on the brakes. I saw 2 men step out and walk toward the car. I adjusted the stick and went in reverse. My foot became a block of lead as the tires kicked up mud. I didn't look back for a second. I hit something behind me. It smashed my bumper. I was stunned by the collision.
That's what happens if you floor it in reverse but don't look back for a second.
Well, Jason Statham...
You think you would only look back for the... Yeah, whatever.
Jason Statham never looked back, and that's true. That's why his next movie is called Never Look Back. I was stunned by the collision. I saw another man come at me from behind. The 2 in front didn't stop. I went to scream, but the clench of fear grabbed my throat. I went for my door, but they broke my windows. They reached and grabbed for them. One managed to wrap their hands around my throat. I struggled, but I didn't want to get killed. I figured playing dead would help, so I froze and then blacked out. So it didn't really help.
That's a pretty... And, well, maybe she voluntarily blacked out. She's really fucking good at playing dead. You can just on demand...
I can stop my heart whenever I want.
Yeah.
I woke up in a horrible scene. I was in a wooden cage made out of branches and vines, completely made by hand. It was impressive. I like the appreciation for craftsmanship. It's like, wow.
It's horrible, but really nice job.
It's like, wow, all out of wood, huh? Yeah. Is this oak? I felt sick to my stomach. I looked to my left and saw similar cages. They were more broken down. I looked at my hands and saw my hands were bound. There was a gag in my mouth. I wanted to chew through it, but I was much too weak. I looked out to the sky. I couldn't tell what time it was. I was stripped of my phone, my watch, my necklace, and my earrings. I checked, and luckily I had all my clothes on, and although being muddy, were not torn.
I like that she had to check, though. Like...
Yeah, you do the pat down, you know. All right, let's be sure. Shirt, shoes, pants, good. I blinked heavily, still trying to figure out what was going on. I thought if Tina was wondering about me. I looked out and began to silently pray. I was sweating, making my cold body even colder. The mud sent chills up my spine. I heard the cage open. Two big men with mud plastered on their faces and with weird markings on their chest grabbed me by the arms and forcefully dragged me out. One picked me up by the arms, one by the legs. I was terrified. I began to cry with trying to hide it. Like, just, I know it's creepypasta, but just proofread this once. Like, motherfucker. Like,
well, I mean, I called this one of my main characters by two different names, so I can't.
And that was somehow more forgivable than this, because it was at least I could read the two names.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I'm stumbling on sentences here, but I'm not even pointing out all the ones I'm just reading on the fly right
like
now.
As you go,
Yeah. I felt like I was in the middle of a torture horror movie like Hostel. I could barely see in the fog, but what I did see was just the light as I saw as I drove. 5 homemade torches were put in a circle. That's when I saw something horrifying. It gives me chills to this day when I think about it. My nerves were turned up high as I approached it. It was a stone altar with a crocodile on top. The crocodile was dried and cut open. Its jaws were ripped open to an unnatural size. Its vital organs were removed. They laid me down. I tried to shake free, but it didn't work. Blood went up and down my back, which meant one of two things. One, they had done this recently and the blood hadn't been cleaned, or two, they have done this before and recently. More people appeared.
So it really means one of one thing.
It means they've done this shit.
Right.
More people appeared. I couldn't tell who these people were, but based off of the figures, I noticed the creeper, the woman, and the tire repairman. But there was more. All men or women. No crocodiles in robes like I thought.
Yet.
Oh god, that would get so good. That's when, even though I was upside down, I saw what shocked me more than anything else. A Native American-style body painting was Tina's father. He was leading this. This sick ritual was led by one of the most religious people I knew. I went to scream, but I was muffled. I was all confused. It made no sense unless... No, she couldn't be. She wouldn't. That's when I swallowed my thoughts and a piece of me had just been shot in the forehead. Tina walked next to her father. She looked at me with a straight face. I was in complete shock. I was not prepared for this. Sadly, it began to make sense. Why would she come...
I'm glad that she pointed out that she wasn't prepared to be accosted and then apparently sacrificed by her best friend.
Right. I was going to say, like, at what point does this become completely unbelievable? Because, like, really, psychopaths in the fucking swamp? Like, that's completely impossible. Anyway, sadly, it began to make sense. Why would she come out of the blue? Why so late? It started to make sense, but I wouldn't have guessed that before. I felt betrayed, but I had to figure out how to get out alive. He raised his hand, and they were silent. Do you accept safety with God? Asked Tina's father. I nodded. Liar, you indecent, inhuman virus. He gave Tina a small torch and she placed it at my side. I wailed and began to cry. I thought I was not going to make it out alive. She removed the torch. I was sobbing. I shook my head. "Are you a sinner?" I nodded. I doubted my escape. In fact, I knew I was going to die. He began speaking.
I know you're not going to because you're telling this story.
Yeah, you're fucked. He began speaking Latin. I was getting nervous. I had no idea what he was speaking about. Finally, the nail was in the coffin. Tina took a knife and cut my upper chest. I sobbed as I felt blood escape me. I closed my eyes. I felt 2 men grab my arms and lifted me up. I was feeling weak as they shoved me in the swamp. I was thrashing, but then an idea hit me. Playing dead. I closed my eyes and stopped moving. The one idea I ever have in any jam ever. Play dead. Luckily, it worked. I stopped moving and I was lifted up out of the water. I laid motionless, eyes open. I prayed they wouldn't check my pulse. I guess they didn't see that as important. I was still bleeding, however, it was covered by mud a bit. It was a swamp. I was dragged away and tossed onto a pile. I knew just what the pile was made of. It was a pile of bodies. They were all sacrificed in this sick ritual. I was scared. I had to find a way to escape. I heard a weird prayer ceremony going on. I pushed off the wet skin of the dead. The cloth they used to bind me was soaked and weak due to the water, so I easily ripped them off. It was a disgusting scene. They were pale, cut, and in torn clothes. The smell, I will never forget the smell. They were rotting away in the open. Repulsive, absolutely repulsive. I looked and saw what made all the more strange. At the bottom of the pile, but facing out toward me, was Tina's mother. She was one of the first. I threw up in my mouth, but kept it down in order to keep quiet. I heard the chanting get louder. I knew they wouldn't hear me. I ripped my shirt and quickly applied pressure to my wound. It was painful, but at this point I had to. I was in full survival mode. With my knees weak and this stab wound, I had to force myself to run. I was sick to my stomach, but I ran. I made a dash. The mud slammed underneath my footprints, making small splashes. I didn't care. I wanted to survive.
So she couldn't make a sound of throwing up, but just like running all...
We have to keep quiet.
Yeah. I don't know why I'm overthinking this, because it's a creepypasta, but...
No, we're talking about survival mode here. I didn't look back, but I did hear something. I heard the chanting stop. Sinner! The sinner is a demon! Those sick bastards thought I was a demon. I tried to think...
I just said, damn fucking right I'm a demon. Get the hell away from me.
I'm the crocodile demon. Blah! And hopefully they ran away.
Shit, she was just playing dead again. We keep falling for that.
Fuck, we stabbed her in the chest and she's still here. I tried to think of how or what it would cause them to be this way, but I focused on running. I started to sprint. The trees were thick as was the fog. I hoped they couldn't see, but I heard them rush at me. I sprinted further. My lungs were burning. I felt that they were melting. When I stopped, I saw an area of rusted cars. Some have been here for quite a while. Others are just as fresh as maybe weeks, maybe days. One of them was my car with a busted bumper. I heard the footsteps come. I slid under a car and they rushed past me. I took slow breaths. I felt something grab my leg and my heart sank. I kicked and was about to scream, but it let go. I looked and saw a snake slither past me. I caught my breath only to begin to run. I ran into the dirt road that led to the swamp where I was found. I don't really remember the rest because I collapsed. I went into shock and collapsed, which you just said. All I could get out there were the words Crocodile, Tina, and why. I woke up 3 days later. The police interviewed me and I told them everything. It was painful. I felt like crap, totally beaten up. I had bruises and the stab wound was infected due to the mud that, ironically, probably saved my life. A week later, the police came back with news. They couldn't find the cult. They couldn't find anything. However, they found the bodies. No evidence with them, and if they did find them, they couldn't charge them. They did find my phone and gave it to me. It was dead. I pulled it, thankful I didn't need a new one. When I turned it on, it had 2 messages.
That's what I'm worried about after surviving something like that. It's like,
well,
thank fucking God I don't need to buy a...
Like, the last thing I want to do is go to the fucking Sprint store and deal with it. Like, I've just been stabbed. I really don't want to talk to those people and try to get upsold some bullshit. Anyway, when I turned it on, it had 2 messages. The first was from Tina saying, "Where are you?" sent at 8:30 of that night. The second was from my other friend, Abby. It read, "Tina invited me to a party at 8:30. Her place in Larrabee. Did you get the invite?" That was sent 2 days ago while I was out. They had moved again. They lured another victim. I cried that night. I felt the pain in my gut. So this is why I write to you all now. I know you all think I'm crazy, but I swear I'm not. This was my experience. If you don't believe me, like I said, I won't blame you. In fact, I understand. But I know what I saw. I want to warn you, however, sometimes things aren't as they seem. So why is that, like, why are they like, oh, fuck? Like, you have names of the people who did it.
Right. And a pile of bodies, apparently. That would have made more sense to be like, well, we found torches, but we don't see any bodies or cars. Because then you'd be like, well, fuck, now there's no
and you evidence. Know, and that's that classic Louisiana detective thing of like a pile of bodies, nothing we can do about it. We only have 2 names and the pile of bodies to go off of.
Look, we just can't prove foul play. Maybe these people all came out and stabbed themselves.
And, like, all due respect, like, there's only so many fucking swamp areas in the United States. You can spread this out. Like, you could find these people.
Yeah.
And, like, again, a psycho cult is not impossible. I actually, like, it's not written well, but I think, like, the set, like, that setting of, like, a crocodile altar is pretty cool.
Yeah. It's like they had a good idea, but they didn't know how to get the character there in a plausible way.
Like, they kind of just did.
Sorry, nothing about that car ride was plausible. Like, she could have just gone to Tina's house and then gotten grabbed and, like, shoved in a trunk, right? Because she's not expecting anything. It wouldn't have been difficult. I don't know. Yeah. This is a real minor thing that, you know, it's not an actual criticism, but it was funny to me because that's how my brain works. But she said Tina's address was like what? Like
43 3rd Street or something.
3rd Street. And then she's like, so I'm driving out in the middle of the swamp. When the fuck are you going to find a 3rd Street in the middle of a swamp? Like, when streets are named 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th Street, that means you're in the middle of a town.
Yeah. But you got to cut through the swamp. It's Swamp Town.
And then from my nerdy point of view, she's like, oh, thrown on this pile of bodies, and I get it. It's like, oh, they've been doing this forever, and there's her mom. And I get that. That's kind of a cool reveal, except bodies decompose very fast, especially in a swamp.
I know a skeleton structure when I see one, and that's her, damn it.
Those cheekbones, you sons of bitches.
I mean, there are... decomposition does happen really fast, but... there are still traits and stuff, so, you know, who's to say? Like,
well, like, for instance, and terrible story, I don't know the details, but they found a body in a river here, like, a couple days ago, and it's only been, I think, like 2 weeks, but with the water and stuff, they couldn't even tell immediately if it was a male or female or what race they were. So, I mean, when I say body decompose, I don't mean like, oh, it'd be a skeleton and just a skeleton, but there's bloating, there's it's gross, but I don't think you would recognize.
But if you're in a pile of bodies, that preserves you.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
That's just a scientific fact.
But no, yeah, like you said, I do like the idea, and you could see that, especially if you had somebody that was phonetically religious, and then their wife divorced him, and they were like, their world shattered. Like, you could see...
And you're right, the crocodile's my one true god. That's how you deal with, like, breakups and shit, right?
I was a little disappointed that when it was Crocodile Cult, there wasn't more crocodile involvement.
That's the thing. Like, instead of just stabbing them, you think they would, like, have a crocodile, like, slowly walk up the altar and try to just eat your shit.
Right, and that's what I thought when you said there's an altar with a crocodile on top. I thought it was a living one, like, waiting to feed it, and then it's, like, cut open, and you're like, oh.
Yeah. But yeah, I like the idea. And again, like we always say with these, you know, we give the story shit, but like even like really bad grammatical errors, like we're all guilty of that shit. And, you know, and for a creepypasta, really, I give them shit, but how much proofreading do you really want to do for this type of thing?
Well, and that's the thing. It's like when you write... if you're just sitting down at the forum, I don't know if it's just like one main forum for creepypasta. I know the one that you go to, or if it's a more spread out thing now. Like I was kind of,
it's kind of become creepypasta started with the Something Awful forums, where if you've never been to them, they're like one of the few like still pretty active message boards on the internet. Most people don't use message boards anymore. They use Reddit and shit. And that's where like Slender Man came from, and it's like almost like this community project of horror stories. And then Creepypasta just sort of branched out of that. It's kind of like Let's Plays, like how Let's Plays started on the Something Awful forums as these people just playing video games for each other. And now it's just everybody with like a YouTube channel does Let's Plays. So now it's just a one-size-fits-all definition.
You say, oh, you can't you do some proof? And yeah, I mean, obviously you should if you're seriously writing. But I could see sitting down like at a forum and doing new post and just hammering out the story, and then you hit send because that's how message boards and forums.
And the truth is, I write shit like that all the time.
Oh, all the fucking time. Yeah, whenever I do my first like full read through of something, there's a really fun arc. If you're not a person that writes,
get in on this shit because
yeah. So it's a roller coaster of I am a complete trash human being and I'm worthless, and then I'm a genius and this is so fucking good, and you go through that the whole time, and then you get the end and you're like, okay, now I should go back and read through this, and you'll hit sentences where you're like, I don't even know what I was thinking there.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I remember in I think it was middle school. At some point I wrote like the sentence, "The killings were great," and my teacher was very confused, and I was very confused because I didn't know.
And you got called into the principal's office. And
I was just like, I think I meant like grade and number or something. Yeah. It was some history paper, but it was very like poorly phrased instruction. I was just like, oh shit.
And you were on the watch list for the rest of your school career.
Well, at that point, the vice principal of that school fucking hated me, so I was already on his list.
But it was an interesting story, plenty to laugh about, but it's
but totally a creepypasta. It's like there's not. So like I said, like it could have been reread at least once to make it a little easier, but it's an interesting idea that you can tell it was more practice for them than like crafting a story.
Yeah, the only unforgivable part of it to me is that it's called the Crocodile Cult, and you get to the end and she never reveals that the dad was Paul Hogan.
He wouldn't do that.
You call that a sacrifice? This is a sacrifice.
You could just do the knife line. That's no knife. This is a knife. And it's like, oh God, please no, Paul.
He's like, you don't want me to kill you? No, I don't want you to do that character anymore. Just kill me now.
Anyway,
just kidding.
But do the character forever, please.
I love Paul Hogan. At least Crocodile Dundee. Not a whole lot about him as a person, but
now we do. Now that we've read his story, so this is the first step for brand new territory for us. And by brand new, I mean we've done it multiple times over the course. But we're back.
It was kind of good to get started with a creepypasta, because if you hadn't heard, it gives you an idea for what this
format is.
Format will be, and it'll let you imagine what will happen when it's our own stories. Although I would suggest you go back and listen to episode 50, because it was a very
fun episode.
And plus, I think it'll help if you feel like we're being dicks to some random internet stranger. That is not our intention at all. We say that all the time.
Yeah.
And if you want proof of that, go back and listen to episode 50.
Yeah. And I should say, like, normally, if they give me an author name when I find these, like, most of these are, like, they say these are fair use to do whatever, so we're not fucking doing anything wrong by sharing them on the show. But, if they do put an author name, I'm always going to give them credit for that. But on this one, it was anonymous. Like I said, the real vibe I got from this was like kind of an interesting idea, but really somebody just wanting to, work on actually writing it out, not really, something you would necessarily want to put your name onto it, just something to have fun.
or we're all stupid because it started out with about a 4-page essay explaining how this is all real and the person is not crazy.
Yeah.
So
Next
this
thing-
is somebody trying to confess. Like, they're like, the fucking police didn't do shit. Like, will somebody please look into this?
10 episodes later, you'll be doing this show alone, talking about how I got caught by the Crocodile Cult for being a smartass. But yeah, we'll be back next week with a whole new story from someone else. Maybe one of us, maybe not, depending if my fucking immune system will ever get back on track. So yeah.
Yeah, so see you in a week, as long as you don't get too reticulated in the off time.